Thank you, Pastor, for allowing me to get up here. I've been so nervous since he said I could speak. But then when I think, I'm not going to be speaking this morning. If the Lord don't say it, it won't be said. But to start off with, I was here approximately 6 years ago and gave my testimony. Some of you heard it. And you that heard it, you need a booster shot. You that didn't hear it, this is the 7th day of the year. A new start. We don't have to look back and see what went on in our lives before. It's what's going to happen here this morning. I believe that the Lord has given me the message, the testimony, that you are saved are going to move up closer. And you that are not saved, some of you will come this morning and ask the Lord to save you. It's simple. In Romans 10:13, whosoever calleth upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Isn't that simple? And then, if you do that, like I did in 1969, you can turn over to in Psalms 23, the first verse. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. But I come here this morning to tell you, since I gave my testimony 6 years ago, the Lord has blessed me that I've been able, by His leadership, to go into almost every denomination that there is and tell the people how that they can live better. The Lord only wants one thing out of all of us. That one thing is your best. Nothing else. If you'll give Him your best, He requires nothing else out of any of us. So this morning, I want some of you to dedicate your life back to the Lord and give Him your best for the rest of your life. I've been in holiness churches, Baptist churches, Methodist churches, Presbyterian churches. And the people sitting on the pew are just like you. It's not the name on the building, it's what you want in your heart. And here this morning, some of you can get revived. It took me a long time to get to the place that I am. And when I give my whole life to the Lord, I've been the most blessed person that you have ever laid your eyes on. There is nothing in my life that tells me that I should be standing up here talking to you. But I surrendered. And when I surrendered my life to the Lord and let Him take over and tell me what to do, how to act, where to go, then I became so happy and content with my life for the past 15 years. And my testimony is this. We all make decisions. There's not a person in here that hasn't made a lot of decisions. Some of you made New Year's resolutions, and it's 7 days into the year and you've already broke. You know, decisions everybody makes. And I've worked for myself all my life. And I've made thousands and thousands of decisions. I made some good decisions, just ordinary decisions. I made some that's very bad. But I made 3 great decisions in my lifetime. The first great decision that I ever made, I was working in the service station up in the Appalachian Mountains in the coal fields. And one Saturday evening, 2 young ladies came in the service station. One of them handed me a quarter and said, could I get 5 nickels? I took the quarter, give her 5 nickels, they left. The next Saturday, they did the same thing. They came in the service station just before we closed, because back then, businesses wasn't open on Sunday. But, everything goes now. But she came in, handed me a quarter and wanted 5 nickels. I looked at her and I said, what do you want 5 nickels for? She said, my daddy wants us to have money to put in church. I gave them to her and she left. She kept coming in. I finally asked her for a date. She was so pretty. I'm working there in that grease pit, that service station, and I didn't know what she'd answer to me. But she said yes. We dated for a while. I asked her to marry me. And luckily for me, she said yes. And on November the 19th, we have been married 65 years. We've got 4 children. We got 10 grandchildren. We got 27 great-grandchildren. And this morning, in somebody's church all over, everywhere they're living now, at least 55 of them will be in somebody's church. That's a miracle. And that is why I can say I've been most blessed. That was the first great decision that I ever made. The second great decision that I ever made, I was living on Blair Loop Road. And on August, the first Monday night in August of 1969, there's a car sitting in the driveway, a strange car. I pulled in the driveway, went in the house. It was Brother Bob Barber and his dear wife, Justine. They were out on visitation trying to get folks in church and Sunday school under the sound of the gospel. We weren't church people. I didn't grow up to be in church. The coal camp that we lived in had a little small cinder block church. We'd go to it when it was convenient, but we weren't church people. So he was trying to get us in church and Sunday school with my 4 little babies. I talked to him a while, and he said, "Brother, your wife would like to be saved, wouldn't you?" I said, "No, preacher. I like to play ball on Sunday. I like to go fishing. I like to get out in the yard and play with my kids. No, I'm not ready to be saved." He said, "Your wife would." I said, "That'd be fine with me." He opened the Bible up to Romans 10 and read a few verses to my wife, told her how she'd be saved. She bowed her head and prayed and asked God to come in her life and save her. They got up to leave. When he got in the doorway, he turned back around and looked at me and he said, "Brother, I got to ask you one more time when you like to be saved." I didn't know what it was then, but I do now. It was the Holy Spirit dealing with me. I said, "Yes, I would." So they came back in. He opened the Word of God again in Romans, read some verses to me, told me how I could pray and ask God to save me. I bowed my head and prayed. I said, Lord, for the rest of my life, I want to live for you the best that I know how. They said a little prayer and left. I went in, ate my supper, went out on the porch the house was living in, sat down, and I was just thinking about what I just a little while ago had said. Lord, I'll live for you the best I know how. And right there on that porch, I prayed my first prayer. I said, Lord, tonight, I asked you to save me. Come into my life. I'd live for you the best I know how. I said, Lord, I'd like to know if you heard me. And sitting there on that porch, he confirmed to me that he'd heard my prayer. I was saved. I was on my way to heaven. I got up, ate, washed, went to bed, worked all week, and out in the yard on Saturday evening playing with my babies. This car comes back down the driveway. Stops. I go over and he gets out. He said, Brother, I just come by to encourage you to be in church Sunday. I said, Preacher, we were planning on being there. And we talked a few minutes about a few things. And he said, Brother, do you believe in tithing? I said, Preacher, I can't tithe. I'm 2 months behind in the rent on this house. The car's sitting there, I'm 2 months behind. Everybody that will give me anything on credit, I'm behind in my payments. Preacher, I can't tithe. He said, Brother, it's scriptural, and the Lord bless you for it. I said, I can't. I can't give to the church what I should be paying somebody with. I didn't know then that 1/10 of what you make is the Lord's anyway. So I thought a few minutes, and he looked at me and he said, I'll make you a deal. I said, what is that, preacher? He said, you tithe for 7 weeks. If the Lord don't bless you for it, you come and tell me, and I'll give it back to you. And I thought, well, on Monday, he came in my house and told me how I could be saved, miss hell and go to heaven. And now he's telling me how I can be blessed. I said, Preacher, I'll do it. But at the end of 7 weeks, if something hadn't happened, I'm going to come to you and tell you I've got to have that money. He said, Brother, I'll give it back to you personally. So he had a little prayer with me, got in his car and left. We got up Sunday morning, went to church, the old tabernacle. When the offering was played, I put the tithe in. I came home and wrote it down. I got a very short memory, and I didn't want to forget what I put in that offering plate. I did that for 3 weeks. And on the 4th week, there's a Wimpy Jones had some restaurants here in Danville. Most of you remember. And it had a little fire. And he called and wanted me to come and look at it, see if I could get it fixed back so they could get back in business. I went, looked at it, told him what it would cost. He said, I want you to do it. And I need it done as quick as you can get it done so that I can get back in business. And we went to work on it, worked all week, got it done on Friday. Cleaned up the mess. I fixed out a bill, gave it to him. And he looked at the bill. And he looked at me. And he said, Don, you've did me a good job. You did it better than I thought you'd be able to do it. I'm going to give you some extra. That extra, folks, was a whole lot more than those 3 weeks of tithing. From that day till me standing here looking at you, I have never made 1 cent that the Lord didn't get a tenth of it. Listen, you cannot outgive God. I don't care what it is. If you're trying to help somebody, He's going to bless you more than what you did. If you give to somebody, He's going to give back to you more than you gave. And that don't mean monetary. Most folks think if the Lord's blessed you, He's putting it in your pocket. No, that's not it. It's health. It's friends, good family, good wife, a good church, a good pastor. That's the blessings. He gives it all to us. He don't just give you one thing. And He don't have any favorites. So if any of you think that God thinks more of you than He does of me, that's not the Bible I read. He has no respect to person. So we're all equal in His sight. The only difference is what you do for Him, how you get your blessings. Because He's never turned down any gift that you offered to Him that He didn't give something back. That was the first and second great decision that I ever made. The third one was this. One day I was going fishing. And when I get in my truck and go somewhere, I'm all time praying. I've prayed for a lot of you where you got sickness, where there's death. Your health is failing. The family's just going wild, praying for folks. But I didn't do that morning. That morning, my prayer was this. Lord, today, I give you all of Don Sparks. Lord, I'm holding back nothing. From now on, Lord, I'm going to do everything you want me to do. I'm going to go where you want me to go. I'm going to talk to anybody you want me to talk to, Lord. I'm going to help anybody that you want me to help, Lord. From now on, you do all the spiritual driving. So many times I get in my truck and I say, Lord, here's what I'd like. I crank it up, put it in gear, and go show Him what I want. But when I prayed that prayer, from now on, the Lord has did the driving. He takes me and shows me what He wants me to do, who He wants me to visit, how He wants to conduct my life. And let me tell you, it's been a blast. That's why I can tell you I'm the most blessed person you've ever looked at. That was the third great decision that I ever made. And then a couple years ago, my daughter's census moved to Lynchburg, but they were in California working with Dr. David Jeremiah. I went out for the birthday. We had a long trip. If you've ever flown much, you know that airlines are not always on time. And we had spent a lot of time at the airports, even had to turn back and go to another plane because a bird had hit the one we was on. And when we got to their house, we were tired. And my daughter said, Daddy, I want something to eat. I said, no, I want to find a bed because their time and our time's 3 hours difference, and it's way past our bedtime. Me and my wife went to bed, and as always, I kiss her goodnight, tell her I love her. And I pillowed my head, and I said, Lord, would you give me something good to dream about? And here's what he said. He said, you go tell the people about the God that you serve. He said, in the beginning, I created heaven and earth and everything that's in it. The oceans, the mountains, the lakes, the rivers, the birds, the flowers, the trees, the fish in the ocean. And I seen everything that I had made was good. And then I made man to name it and to take care of it. He said, you go tell the people that that's a God that you serve. And he said, that's not all. I had a friend named Moses. And one day I told Moses, Moses, I want you to go down into Egypt and to tell Pharaoh to set my people free. And Moses looked at him and said, Lord, I can't go. I got a speech impediment. Lord, if I go down before Pharaoh and talk to him, he won't understand what I'm talking about. Lord, send somebody else. How many times has the Lord spoke to some of you and asked you to do something? You said, Lord, I'm too busy. Lord, I got to go to Walmart. Lord, my friends are out there. I told them I'd be to say to them, Lord, send somebody else. And you just went on. But the Lord said, Moses, I want you to go. You got a brother named Aaron. He'll go with you. And when y'all get before Pharaoh, I'll give you the mouth to speak, the words to say. Moses, I want you to go down and tell Pharaoh to set my people free. And Moses went. And when he got before Pharaoh, he told Pharaoh that the Lord said to let his people go. And Pharaoh let them go. He said, you go tell the people, that's the God that you serve. And he said, that's not all. I had a king, Hezekiah. Hezekiah did everything he could to please me, to honor me, to tell the people how to serve, how to get the blessings. He did it all. But one day he got sick. And when he got on that sick bed, he had a prophet, Isaiah. He said, Isaiah, I want you to go down into the room and tell Hezekiah that he's not going to live. Get his house in order. He's going to die. And he went in and told him. He said, the Lord has sent me to tell you to get your house in order. You're not going to get up on that sick bed. You're going to die. And he left the room. When he left the room, Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and started to pray. He was in a crisis, so he started to pray. Lord, I've did everything I know to please you, to honor you, to give to you, and tell the people how to live. Lord, I don't want to die yet. Give me a few more days. And while he was still praying, the Lord spoke to Isaiah. And he said, Isaiah, I want you to go back in the room and tell Hezekiah, I've seen his tears. I've heard his prayer. I'm going to give him 15 more years. He said, you go tell the people that that's a God that you serve. And he said, that's not all. I had a prophet, Elijah. Elijah was going through the earth preaching and teaching and telling the people how to live. He had power with God, more so than most any of the prophets. He caused it to not rain for 3.5 years. He even raised a child from the dead. He was doing everything. He brought fire down from heaven to consume a sacrifice. He was pleasing and honoring and obeying God, but he was getting old and needed some help. And on one of his journeys, he seen a young man plowing in the field with his oxen. And he went over and touched that young man, and he said, "Come follow me." That young man left his team and went to follow Elijah. That young man was Elisha. He went to do everything he could to please Elijah and to honor God. They went through the country. He was watching Elijah with every move he made. When he would preach, when he would talk to someone, he was watching him. He was helping him, doing the things that folks that's getting old can't do. And one day on one of their journeys, they stopped. And Elijah looked at him like I'm looking at you. And he said, "Elisha, you stay here. It's time for me to go." And Elisha looked at him and he said, "No, I'm going where you go. I'm going to do everything I can to please you and to honor God." So they kept on going through the country, telling the people how to live, how to honor God. But one day they go down to the Jordan River. And when they get down to the river, Elijah looks at Elisha again. And he said, "You stay here. Time for me to go to the other side. Time for me to go." And Elisha looked at him. He said, "No, I'm going where you go. I'm going to do everything I can to please you and to honor God." And Elijah looked at Elisha and he said, "If you're with me when I go, ask what you will, and you'll receive it." Folks, how many of you are living close enough to God? You're praying, you're reading your Bible, you're visiting, you're doing everything you can to please God. That when it comes time for us to go, and your children, your friends, your family, your relatives, your church member, when they walk by that casket, have you lived a good enough life, as somebody'd say? He lived a good, or she lived a good life. How many of you lived that good that you'd say, "I'd like to finish out my life like they did"? We got a big responsibility as Christians. The lost world is not going to come and pat you on the back. We got to go out and make ourselves known to do and to obey and to honor God. So Elijah takes his mantle, goes to the Jordan, hits the water, and the water parts. They go to the other side on dry ground. When they get over there, there's a chariot of fire waiting for Elijah. He gets on that chariot, and when he gets on that chariot and he starts to descend off toward heaven, Elisha is standing there looking on and watched him as he's going on out of sight. And the chariot kept going, and the mantle fell from Elijah. And when he went on out of sight, Elisha goes and picks it up, goes back down to the Jordan, and he hits the water, and he said, where is the God of Elijah? When he says that, the water's part, he goes back to the other side on dry ground. He said, you go tell the people that that's a God that you serve. And he said, that's not all. I looked down from heaven, and I seen my people. They were doing everything they could that didn't please me. They were making their own little idols. They were building their own images. They were planting groves so that they could worship and do everything that they could that displeased me. And I sent my son, my only son, to earth to be a sacrifice for them. And while on this earth, he went about healing the sick, opening the eyes of the blind. He made the lame to walk. He raised the dead. He fed 5,000 men at one time. And they thought he was an imposter. So they took him and they hung him on a cross. When they put him on that cross, he shed his blood for you, for you, for you, and for me. And while he was still on that cross, a Roman soldier takes a spear and pierces his side so that every drop of blood comes out for you, for you, and for you, and for me. And they took him down off of that cross, and he's ascended back to his Father in heaven. He's sitting at his right hand making intercession. When I got saved, he said, Father, here comes Don Sparks. When you got saved, he called your name. Here they come. Here they come. But some of you haven't gotten saved yet. So he can't call your name because he don't know you. But when you bow your head and pray and ask God to save you, come into your life, you live for him the best that you know how, then he's sitting there to tell his Father, here he comes. And some of you have not given your whole life to the Lord. You're still holding back a little. I did that for years and years. I held that back a little for Don Sparks. But when I surrendered all, give it all to the Lord, I've had the happiest 15 years of my life because I am trying to please and honor God. So in just a minute or so, I want you to stand. And you that wants to get closer to the Lord this year, I want you to come up and stand here. If anybody wants to be saved, I want you to come up here. And the pastor will stand up here and we'll pray for those that wants to get closer. And he'll show those that wants to be saved how you can pray and ask God. How do I know all of that? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Let's stand.